we have 3 new board members, we thought that we would begin with Joe has such a good presentation that we thought we would ask Joe and Mr. Terry Dean to help you guys with that presentation. So I'm going to turn it over to Joe and Terry.
All right. Well, thank you so much for inviting us to be here with you. I thought it would be in person back when we first talked about it, but I guess this will have to do, and this is how business is being done. As you know, we're going through some trying times these days, but none of the work stops. So we're in the middle of the budget season and getting ready to do that. I'd like to just ask Terry, as we go through this presentation, to feel free to join in at any time and add anything that you might have with all of the experience that you've had over the years. We've been doing this presentation or several versions of it, not only for school board members, but for superintendents, new superintendents, and school business officials. So I think it lays out a good baseline for what school board responsibilities are in the area of budget and finance. What I wanted to do was just give you a little background, a brief background on myself, first of all, just to let you know that the School Board Association is sort of my second career. My first career was in state government, working 28 years there, actually. I was the state planning director, doing a lot of planning work, a lot of grants work. And then the second half of my career there was at the Department of Finance and Administration Local Government Division, where we oversaw city and county budgets and also administered all the capital outlay for cities and counties. So when I retired, it's been a while now, I became a school board member for 12 years here in Espanola, and got real active with the association. And then, of course, about 12 years ago, the position of executive director opened up, and I've been there 12 years now. So sort of 2 careers, a school board career and a state government career. But just to give you a little background in terms of finance and budget expertise that I've been able to develop over the years. What I wanted to do this evening was also just give you, most of you are familiar with NMSBA and the services that we provide, the responsibilities we have. I also wanted to review with you the board responsibilities that you have, both statutorily and through regulation, and then go over some tips for you in terms of budgeting, sources of revenue, school budget and oversight, of course, audit and accounting procedures, investment of school funds, and then some traits of effective financial and school leaders. So I'd like to get going on that. Are you do you all have the presentation? How is that going to be shared?
They all should have a copy. Does everyone have a hard copy?
Yes. I've got it on my desktop. That's also in front of me.
Okay.
Okay.
Yes.
All right. So you'll see and I'll pretty much follow that, and we'll stop from time to time if you have questions, or if you want to save questions till the end, that's fine as well. But I don't have a problem with just going ahead and taking the question we're on that particular item. So let me just a little bit about the association. You can see on the slide there. For some reason, all my slides are numbered 0, so I won't be able to help you that way. But the NMSBA mission is to, of course, assist boards provide the best education possible. And we do that through a number of ways, identifying the proper role of school board members. And all of you know that we provide training, encourage the efficient and effective administration of boards and schools, and provide information to school boards, also represent school boards at the legislature and Congress. We go to Washington several times a couple of times a year. We're a 501c3 organization. We've been around since 1958, so we've been here quite a while. We have 89 school boards, 100% membership. We're located in Santa Fe. All of you know about our governance. There we have 5 state officers. We have 40 members on the board of directors. We have 8 regions that are divided geographically, and then we have several committees that we use to get our business done, legislative, nominating, policies, and others. And we have a whole host of services that we provide. You're more familiar with the training at conferences, the policy service that many of our districts take advantage of. Of course, the legislative advocacy services. So that's the quick overview of the association, particularly for those new board members. I know that David, I guess, is back on the board after some time being off, and Eloy and Stephen might be new, and probably I hope you have taken advantage of our new board member training that we provided over the last a couple of months. So we'll go to board responsibilities now, and we have them. We'll start by saying that, you know, public schools are public because they're funded and paid for with public funds. And that's one of the reasons why they say the public schools belong to the people, because they're funded by all, and school board members are elected to oversee these funds and be accountable for their use. Boards must ensure that funds are spent efficiently and equitably, and this is a heavy burden for school board members, but you can meet the challenge if you have a good working relationship and a basic knowledge of school finance and school budgeting, and that always helps. So the statutory responsibilities start off on the next slide. 22-5-4 of the New Mexico statutes set out those responsibilities, and we'll go through these, but I'm going to highlight those that are budget and financial in nature. First of all, you're responsible for developing educational policies for your district. Second, you're responsible to employ a superintendent and set the salary. The next is to review and approve the district budget. So those 3 items, I think, are probably the most important responsibilities you have in statute. Then you have other responsibilities like acquire and lease and dispose of property. You have the right to be sued and to be sued. You have the right to acquire property by eminent domain. Most districts haven't used that authority to obtain properties that you may need for schools. Of course, another important responsibility, financial in nature, is to issue general obligation bonds. So it's your responsibility to determine when your school should go out for bond issues, mill levies, and those kinds of things to keep up with your public facilities needs. Also provide for the repair and maintenance of district property. That's one of your responsibilities. Subpoena witnesses and documents, except for salaries, contract for the expenditure via procurement code, and adopt rules pertaining to board operations, powers, and duties. So you can see that the contracting for expenditures via the procurement code is another one of your major responsibilities in the statute. The next slide, to accept, you have the responsibility to accept or reject any charitable gifts, grants, or other resources. Also to offer and pay rewards for information leading to arrest of district offenders. How do you like that? And then give proper approval to all education programs carried out by private organizations and entities. So if you have any private organizations doing work in your schools, you should have those programs approved by the board. Any questions on the statutory responsibilities before we get into the regulatory responsibilities? No? Okay, well, we'll continue, and they track pretty much, but there's some some additional responsibilities here on the regulatory side. Again, these are authorized by the Secretary of Education Department, and while they don't, they're not as strong or as enforceable as statutory responsibilities. They are you must abide by them. So first is on the statutory, on the regulatory responsibility is review and approve the district review and approve district and school education plans for student success. That's a little outdated. That regulation probably needs to be updated as well. But those education plans for student success were done in the past. I'm not sure how active they are now. Of course, employ and evaluate the superintendent. Develop a planned program of annual training for board members. You as elected school board members are really the only local elected officials that are required to undergo training. And we track all that training, as you know, for each one of you, and we present the compliance report to the Public Education Department every September. But you're required to put together a plan to meet those requirements throughout the year and decide what type of training you're going to undertake. The next one here is to delegate administrative authority to the superintendent. There was quite a bit of back in 2002 when everybody talks about House Bill 212 when boards were responsible for all hiring. That was changed and left that all to the superintendent and took boards out of hiring. So all administrative authority is delegated to the superintendent here. And on the next slide then, on regulatory responsibilities, a follow-up on that particular change is to refrain from involvement of delegated administrative functions. So all of these administrative functions should be delegated to the superintendent. Then the next responsibility is to review and approve school policies, very similar to the statute. One that is probably the best responsibility you have is to award high school graduation diplomas. That's something we've always looked forward to as school board members. And of course, this year it'll be somewhat different as we go through that. And then the next one is to ensure the alignment of curriculum with state standards. So the superintendent and the administrative staff will help in that regard, but it's your responsibility to oversee that as well. And then the next one is, and this is a financial and budget issue, ensure district funds are managed and dispersed appropriately. So you do that through various things, reports that we'll talk about in a little while. I think the last responsibilities here under regulatory are to approve the annual district budget, oversight of revenue and expenditures within the district, ensure the alignment of curriculum, and I'm not sure if this, and coordinate with the superintendent to establish procedure for employee discharge and termination. So as you know, there's a responsibility for boards to preside over termination hearings. Any questions on the regulatory responsibilities? Those are a little more in detail. They cover a wider range of activities, but many of them have to do with financial and budget issues. Okay. Well, we'll get into tips in the various areas now. Some of the suggestions that we have for making sure that these responsibilities are carried out. First, we'll get into sources of revenue. As you know, school budgets are primarily funded by the state through the funding formula, but you do have a whole bunch of different requirements, different funding programs, then of course you have federal money that comes in as well. So we asked that to make sure that we asked the superintendent and finance officers to make sure that the board is familiar with the various sources of revenue that make up the district budget, brief the board on the allowable uses of funds from each source. You know, there's different matching requirements, there's different fiscal years for many of these different funds, and to provide information to boards on the declining or increasing funding trends. In many cases, you need to be aware that programs are being phased out or new programs are coming in, and there'll be additional money or increased funding in the next years. But you should be aware of those things in terms of the sources of revenue. In terms of the school budget, you should be familiar with the board's, and this is talking at this point to superintendent and finance officers, that they should be familiar with the board's vision, goals, objectives, and priorities. And of course, you should too, because you will be setting those, and establish procedures for setting the budget, who does what, when, and recognize that the process involves the board, the administration, staff, and community. So you should have a budget calendar. You should know who's doing what. I think the next slide gets into a little bit of more detail here as well. Develop a school budget calendar which includes dates when budget planning and preparation activities occur, functions, exactly what should be happen by what's dates specified. Many districts start that process in November, October, November. So it's sometimes it's even earlier, but you should get it started as soon as possible. Then also identify which staff members are responsible for each function. In putting together your budget, you should budget for contingencies. You need to have an emergency fund of some kind planned for the unexpected. You should be ready from tough questions from the board as superintendent and finance officer. You need to make sure that the budget reflects the board's priorities as defined in your goals and objectives. Does the budget meet the needs of each school? These are questions that board members will ask. You know, are you dividing the money up equally, or is it being determined by the needs of that particular school? How much money is budgeted per student? Is that consistent throughout your district, or is it different, and why is it different? Several years ago now, about 5, I guess 6 years maybe, the legislature, after a major, boondoggle in one of our districts where there was $2 to $3 million that was, what is that word that you see? That was stolen from the school district. The legislature. What was that?
Embezzled.
Embezzled, yeah. The legislature decided, they put together a committee actually in the interim, and wanted to make sure that boards had more authority and more responsibility and more oversight for the budget. So they passed this law that creates the finance subcommittee and the audit subcommittee. We'll talk about this one first, and it spells out the responsibilities very clearly. This is 22-8-12-3A, and it requires that at least 2 board members serve on this finance subcommittee. The finance subcommittee provides recommendations regarding financial planning, financial statements, revenue and expenditure projections, budget review, procurement, and other financial matters. So this subcommittee must have at least two members from the board. And I should say only 2 board members, because if you had 3, then you would be subject to open meetings and all that kind of stuff. The budget, on this one, I think that I don't know if we have a slide that might be missing here, but I believe that the finance officer and or maybe I'm getting it confused. Let me check real quick here. I think the budget, the finance officer and the superintendent, I think, serve as ex officio members. Dana, maybe you can remind me, is that on the audit committee or on the budget, on the subcommittee finance?
On the audit committee.
Okay.
That is correct. They serve ex officio by statute
Okay.
on the
Yeah.
audit.
I was getting a little ahead of myself then and figuring it might not be there. But let's continue on with budget oversight then. And the recommendations we have for your superintendent and finance officer to keep you updated, and that is to prepare financial reports and review them with the board every month, to make sure the board understands the district's ongoing financial status, explain over and under expenditures, and you should probably receive that in your reports, highlighted those that are over and those that are under, and recognize why that is happening. Be prepared to explain and justify all fund transfers to the board. These generally require board approval in your meetings, and they should be explained and they should be clear to you. We'll get into the audit and accounting procedures at this point. Here's the audit committee. And this is, I guess, the second committee that was established as a result of that legislation several years ago. The staff should work with the board audit committee mandated by statute as well. Members consist of 2 board members, 1 parent volunteer, 1 volunteer with accounting or financial experience. And here's where the superintendent and school business officer serves as ex officio members. So again, this committee has some specific requirements in addition to the 2 board members. I suspect that your committee has been working with these members. On the next slide, the duties of the audit committee are to evaluate the RFP and recommendation for selection of the auditor that's conducting the audit, attend the entrance and exit conferences, meet with the auditor monthly during the audit when there's activity, provide audit status reports to the board, assist the auditor in securing documents and answering questions. Probably this should be left to staff more than anyone in terms of, securing documents, track audit recommendations, and make appropriate policy changes. And I should mention that both the finance subcommittee and the audit committee, they're responsible to make recommendations to the full board. They do not have any authority on their own, only to make recommendations and provide reports to the full board. Some tips on accounting procedures. The board should be assured that there's adequate records and controls are being maintained for all of your funds, that your accounting records reflect what is actually happening in your district. Keep in mind that the public demands transparency in school accounting, and you are the key to success in this area. Some of the questions that boards should ask in this area does the district have an adequate system of internal accounting controls? And there's always recommendations from the auditors in the audit report for new and improved internal accounting controls. You should keep your eye on that. Are the district's accounts all audited? And is money allocated for a specific purpose spent for that purpose? You can, easily get in trouble for spending money if you're not tracking it correctly between some of the funding agencies. You should have provision, ensure that provisions have been made for areas that require special attention in the matching of revenues and related expenditures. Some programs, of course, require local match or in kind, and those match requirements sometimes get stiffer every year depending on the program. So we'll move on to investing school funds, and hope you didn't have any money in the stock market, but here's you need to assure the board that you're maximizing the investment of funds and using earnings to benefit the budget. Also, it's sound business to invest. Although it's sound business to invest, you must assure the board you have minimized the risks. And there are many examples of bad investments, and not in New Mexico, but I've read where some districts have gone bankrupt, and in other states. You should insist that the board, in balancing their need to secure these investments to preserve the safety and security of the public funds and make the most out of these dollars, and making sure that they're safe, sound, legal, and liquid. So I'd like to conclude here with some of the traits of effective financial leaders in helping boards meet their responsibilities in the area of budget and finance. So the first is that your superintendents and financial officers should have a good knowledge of accounting issues, and they should brief you on those issues on a regular basis. They should have specific knowledge of district finances, where you're at any particular time in the year. Of course, always looking to project and plan for changing situations in the coming months and years. You need to have the ability to work well with others. I know I've had some finance officers that aren't the best and easiest people to work with, but their job is so important, and the good ones have the ability to work well with others, and I think that that is the case. Passion, they must have the passion for funding aspects of the educational process. To some people, budget and finance is not exciting, but you can see it in your superintendents and finance officers that the passion is there. Also, the ability to accommodate the work hours required to get the job done. These are long hours, and they're getting longer these days. And then finally, a commitment to ethics and transparency. We say that you should always be ethical and expect your staff to be ethical and transparent. And the U.S. board members should also stress to do that on every occasion. And just to conclude here with this final slide, and sound finances are key to sound academics, and you can see that in the various districts that are doing well throughout the state. They generally have sound finances, they have good administrators, and they have good academic programs. So I'd be happy at this point to take any questions. Maybe Terry would like to add something at this point. I know that you have a lot more experience in this area, having worked over the years. And so questions, additional comments, maybe And then maybe Dana or Claire would like to mention something as well. So,
If I may, and I know that you don't know me, but however, Los Lunas has a congratulations to being elected to the board. Los Lunas has a history of being one of the best ran school districts from a financial standpoint in the state. They've been a leader for many, many years, and it's easier to be a board member when you have a district that is one of the leaders in the state. But one of the things that I would like to say, my background, I came into public schools. I spent a career as chief financial officer for the Las Cruces Public Schools. But prior to coming into to school district, to school business, I was an auditor for school districts and counties, municipalities around the state. One of the things that I really want to point out that, and this is twofold, is the commitment to the internal controls. Now, the internal controls is kind of a nebulous term, but what the internal controls do, they are the policies that ensure that your accounts are being handled properly, and that the information that is coming out of the accounting system can be trusted to be correct. It all starts with the tone at the top. It all starts with the commitment to excellence from the Board of Education to the superintendent and to the business officer. That's where the tone of the top is established, is at the very top. And you're the ones as board that is responsible for that, setting the tone at the top. What is your commitment to excellence? What is your commitment to the policies? And what is your commitment to the internal controls within your district? I know that there are many times throughout the state, a school district will call me and say, hey, we need a policy on investments. I'll send them Los Lunas' investment policy. So anyway, I just wanted to point out the importance of your internal controls and your policies and the ethical standards in which you're committed to in providing quality and transparent business operations and the use of public funds.
very good. Thank you. So any questions or comments at this point?
Mr. Gibb?
Yes.
This is Eloy Giron. On page 19, you touched on familiarize yourself with the revenue sources. Does the State School Board Association have any classes for that we could take that could bring us up to speed quicker so we're a better resource when we sit down at our finance meetings with our superintendent and our chief financial officer? Is there something available for us to?
Yes, in fact, as part of the new board member training program that CES has been helping us with this year, and Gloria Rendon and Hugh Prather have been conducting for us. We were planning the next session, which is scheduled for the school law conference in May, to focus primarily on school budget and finance and to provide as much information as possible during that session. Because of the health order and all that, we're probably in the next day or two going to postpone the school law conference. We're working with the hotel and the Cuddy Law Firm who helps us put on that conference to make a final decision on that. We may move it back, to June, July, and if not, we're already talking about providing those sessions via Zoom or GoToMeeting as we're doing this evening. So we are planning. We have a good curriculum outlined, and it would be a 4-hour training course that would go much more into detail. And then, of course, we'll do some follow-up as well. We do a lot of finance and budget training for all members, not only during the newly elected member training that is open to all members. So we generally have at least 2 or 3 budget or finance sessions or workshops during all of our conferences. So we will have more.
Thank you.
Also, Joe, on the Public Education Department's website, I'm on there trying to find it right now. They used to have a document that it stated understanding school budgets or understanding school funding. I'm not seeing that right at the moment, but there's a lot of information on the Public Education Department's website that you can review.
Yeah, actually, the document, there's a document that I'm familiar with, and maybe the administrators there as well. It's pretty thick, and I think it was everything you wanted to know about this school budget. And Gloria, Dr. Rendon, and Dr. Prather have that document, and they're planning on making copies available at our training.
Claire, did you want to talk about just receiving our budget due date as of today, right?
Hi, yes, we did receive our budget due date this morning, and that is going to be May 19th. So our budget is due to the Public Education Department on May 19th of this year.
And that's fairly early, is it not?
That's earlier than I've had in the last couple of years, especially given the situation that we're in. It'll be interesting. We haven't received very much guidance or information from the Public Education Department. Today was the first time I had heard from my analyst, and he gave us a due date. I asked him when we could expect some additional budget information to be sent out, and he said he would get back to me. So that's all the information that I have right now on the budget. Terry, you might talk a little bit about some of the webinar or us working with Public Education Department to get some of this information out since the spring budget workshop was canceled.
Yes, New Mexico ASBO has been working with the Public Education Department to provide webinars, and then we would make all of those sessions, the recorded webinars. We can only have 250 people in an individual webinar, but and then immediately after that, making that webinar recording available to everybody in the state from our website. You can go to our website at nmasbo.org. But yes, I've got a meeting with PED tomorrow with their IT department, and we should be recording these within the next week and a half, hopefully.
Great. And in today's superintendent's meeting that I listened in on, the direction was to continue to plan for all of the legislatively mandated programs that were authorized under the budget. But I'm sure there'll be some adjustments as we go down the line here, and the need for a special session and those kinds of things will certainly impact your budgets. But I guess the direction today was just proceed as normal, and that's tough. Have you gotten your unit value yet or not?
No.
No, we have not.
Yeah, we were actually just talking yesterday about how crazy it is in terms of not even having any communication from our financial analyst until today, and then for it to be an early time frame. And then, of course, hey, have all your meetings like you're supposed to as well. I don't know how we're going to document that, since not everybody can join a Zoom meeting if they're interested, but we'll do the best that we can.
Yeah. Okay,
I just
any other
have a-
questions?
I just have a couple of things, especially for you, Joe. One for you, Joe. So if you'll just keep us up to date on any online budget-related training that you're going to provide, I think even, I think all of us should tune into something like that and be a part of that. So you can just keep us up to date on that. I'm sure it's in your emails and stuff, but we would definitely want to be part of that. And for Claire, so the due date is May 19th. So once we receive more info, then we're going to schedule some more meetings, correct?
Yes, I didn't get the budget due date until today, so I've spent a little bit of time this afternoon looking at some additional dates and stuff for some work sessions. Like they said, we're still required to comply with all of the budget meetings and get community and parent input into the budget as well. So we'll take a look at that here real quick and try to get some workshops or Zoom meetings set up. And so that's what we're working on.
Okay, so how many of those do we normally have in a regular year, not this year?
Probably, we usually have 2 board work sessions. And then we usually meet with the administrators and the union. We have 1 meeting specific for the community. Dana, are you?
Yeah, I would say that there's at least 5 or 6. I think sometimes we do 3 with the board, and then we do the community, the NEA, the administrators. Sometimes we separate the administrators and go elementary and secondary. So we, we'll have anywhere between 5 or 6 meetings before the budget is submitted. And just what we will have to do is Claire needs probably a week after it's approved. So the drop dead date for the board to approve our budget would be May 12th.
May 12th. Okay, and then how do you do I don't want to say selection because I don't know how it works. How do we pick the community involvement in the budget process? Who goes to that meeting?
What we normally do is advertise it, and then
Okay.
we whoever comes to that meeting, usually it's just 2 or 3 people that come to that meeting, but we advertise it, and then one of those meetings is actually a community meeting that normally the board is at.
And then we also solicit through the principals. We have them invite their parent-teacher organization officers possibly for them to come. But I mean, we do that every single year, and we always have very, very little turnout.
Right. So I'm just curious as to how we would do it in a Zoom meeting, because obviously that's how we're going to have this. And with the limited amount of people that can participate, I don't assume we're going to get overwhelmed with people wanting to participate. I hope we do. I mean, I hope we have to make some choices and stuff, and I hope that the community wants to get really involved with this budget process. But I just wanted to know how that worked. So that's good. That's all I had.
There is, if I could add, there's we posted the Attorney General's guidance on open meetings and hearings like that. And there's some suggestions there on how to make sure that the public participates by having them call-in number. There's some different suggestions in there that you should probably take a look at, and it's posted. I'm sure Dana has it, and if not, it's posted on our website. PED has set that out recently.
Yeah, so we've discussed that when we're going to have community input, that we would have a call-in number. We're in a special circumstance right now, so we've only had 1 board meeting since then. So, but yeah, we'll definitely work on that. And if there's an opportunity to get the public involved and have a call-in number, we're definitely going to consider that. So,
Yeah.
Brian or Dana?
yes.
I was on speed with the due date for the budget is May 19th. And I think Dana, you mentioned May 12th. I missed that. What is that date for?
Claire needs a week after we approve the budget to
Okay.
do stuff, I guess.
Okay.
I don't know what she does. Maybe she can enlighten you.
We have to submit the documentation through the Public Education Department OBMS system. That's the operating budget system that the state has in place. So once we have the expenditures and revenue approved by the board, then we have to have an opportunity to upload that information, make sure we filled out all the reports, required documents, so that's what, we need a little bit of time.
Yeah, make sure that it's balanced as it goes in and, that sort of thing. So we'll take all of the input from all of the community meetings and the board's approval, and we'll send that in as a balanced budget as we.
Salary schedule take a long time to prepare as well. So once we have the information on the salary schedules, then we work on that. We actually already, Carlos and Sandy are already working on those individual documents that they're responsible for getting those prepared, but we has to go through the approval process and the negotiation process as well.
And we also submit our school calendar with the budget as well.
Okay, and I'm not here to put anybody in the spot here. Mr. Guillen mentioned that we probably have a budget calendar. I don't know if we do or we don't. If we do, can we, at least us new board members, and I don't know if Frank and Brian want to be included in this also, but bring us up to speed on it, know where we're at with it, then
So since.
I don't know if you have that or a different mechanism.
Well,
So-
we always put out a calendar once we know what the date is for it to be submitted to the state. And since we just received that today, it'll be, 2 or 3 days before we get it to you, but we will absolutely get that out to you as soon as we possibly can.
Yes.
Okay, well, I guess I missed it. I was thinking a budget calendar was the days that you'd have targeted already, where we would find our value of each student, and then how are we dividing our money up? That's what I guess I missed it. So I'll ask those questions later internally to you, so I'll just send you an email. I'm good.
Mr. Smith,
Otero.
from what I recall on the budget, and correct me if I'm wrong, Claire, it usually comes in kind of generic, doesn't it? When you're having the hearings, and then we don't get the real final numbers till we approve the budget? Or is it even after that?
We use, best information that we are provided at the time. So typically when we have our first meeting like now, we would say that we haven't received the unit value from the State Department yet. We're working based off of either using existing numbers. We know what the legislation that was passed. So, there's unknowns, but there's a lot of information that we're already working towards based off of the legislation that was passed. But yes, so we'll,
Yeah,
go through
I
a
just
process
wondered-
where we solicit input from the board and priorities. So when we meet later, then we discuss how we've been able to accomplish some of those ideas or priorities into the budget.
Yeah, I just wanted to point that out, just so that when the board members go to, to the workshops, won't expect more than what you're going to offer. It'll, like you say, there'll be more to it as the process develops.
Yes.
Thank you, Mr. Otero.
Thank you.
And the other thing you should keep in mind is the unit value will probably be very conservative this year, even though there was some increases approved by the legislature. I'm not sure that and Terry would be able to guess at it more, and that is, so even though there was additional money, they may not release it in the first round of the unit value.
Yes, I anticipate that, and Claire, I think both of us would agree, especially in the downturn of the oil price. We anticipate that number being pretty conservative, probably just barely enough to cover the salary increases that are mandated in statute.
And sometimes we call them unfunded mandates.
Yep.
Any other comments? Questions? So Joe, does this count as towards our attendance award that we always get?
It'll count towards your hours of training, okay? Since you didn't attend the region meeting this year, or this spring, we may not have any attendance awards. Yeah, that was too bad. But like I say, we really like getting out at the region meetings and seeing the districts in their own regions and with the possible postponement of the law conference, I'm not sure when we're going to get together again if we're ever able to leave our homes. But we'll think positive, okay?
Fair enough, but if you stop counting, then we keep the plaque for one more year, so it doesn't really.
Right.
So is that what we had on the agenda for today?
Mr. Smith?
Yes.
I just want to thank Mr. Gann and Mr. Dean for taking the time out of their busy schedules to meet with us. I thought that the information that they provided was very, very important, and I just was hopeful that that would be helpful for the new board members.
Absolutely. I as well want to thank Mr. Dean and Joe as usual, all of the board members, Claire, Dana, everybody listening, and especially Brian. I know that you have a lot of work to do to put this kind of thing on, and you're doing a terrific job. I don't know if you can hear me or not, but somebody will relay that message to you. For those of you that don't know him, Brian is our tech that is making this thing possible. So, and thank all of you that listened at home, from home, and we hope that you continue to be a part of this progression towards the end of this school year and the beginning of next school year. So if that's it, I want to thank everybody. Are you good?
Thank you.
All righty.
Thank you.
Thank you
Have
so
a nice
much.
day.
Have a good night.
Have a good evening.
You too.
Okay, bye.